I would like everyone to actually pay attention. This isn't a sales call. This is important stuff that you need to know if you're creating toys for your brand.
Are you going to tell everyone off? Because that's how it feels.
I think so.
So welcome back to Building Character. As you can see, I've got Christian, our CEO, has made it back on the pod. So
By popular demand.
I'm not sure.
Thousands of fans have been writing in from all around the world saying, where's Christian? Why is he not on the episode?
They were missing you.
They were?
Yeah.
I've seen the comments.
Is it all you?
It could have been.
Might
it could have
have
been. I did actually get a Russian bot farm just to...
A Russian bot.
Just to get some comments in to get me back on, but thankfully I've made it. I'm paying for this thing, so
you made the cut. Yeah, unfortunately I have to have Christian on occasionally because he is paying, but hopefully last time for a while.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, Sophie. I feel really welcome.
You're welcome. But no, so today's episode is Stay With Me. It is all about safety today, which is why I've brought Christian on, because he is all clued up with that type of stuff. And yeah, I think it's really important for us to kind of educate our listeners about this. So obviously a bit of a different episode for us today. We're looking at something that some might find a little bit more serious, and probably a lot of people that we are working with, it's something that they're not really sure about. And yeah, it's very much a case of what we're doing behind the scenes to make sure that everyone's kind of products that they're purchasing for us, whether it's plush toys, vinyl figurines, is all safe. And we have come across a article from the Toy and Hobby Association, which is why we've kind of brought Christian back onto the podcast, just to kind of dive into that and really break it down. So yeah, if you wanted to.
Yeah, well, it's something we hear sometimes from some prospective clients. They say, I could get a cheaper price from going to Alibaba and finding a supplier. And it's something that, to be honest, I didn't actually realise was such an issue until we got this article through. So I've written down, I've got some notes. But the British Toy and Hobby Association, so they've launched their investigation. They've been running this investigation for actually 8 years. They've just done their most recent update. And from the toys that they bought from third-party resellers on mainstream platforms like eBay, Amazon, AliExpress, Temu, Wish, all brands that everyone's heard of, 88% of the toys that they bought were found to be illegal, which is like crazy. That just shows that 9 in 10 toys that don't come through the normal channels, where it's coming from a high street store, for example, are dangerous. So, 48% was specifically dangerous. So technically unsafe. Forget about the legal labelling traceability aspect of it, which sort of is the license of the toys, and it is somewhat secondary because it is what makes something technically legal. The fact that 48% were actually dangerous, and by dangerous we mean things like choking hazards, small parts that can be removed and become a choking hazard, long loops that become a strangulation risk. And then you've got things like flammability, which is crazy that some things, to me, that some toys that have come through are actually failing the flammability part of EN71. And then, to me, the scariest part is the toxicity part, so EN71 part 3. So that's like when you're creating toys for young children, babies, you have to be aware that that's often going to end up in their mouth. So what they're testing for with that is the leaching of harmful chemicals from the materials that toys are made from. So things like lead and how other heavy metals, they're finding to be present in some toys that people are buying online. And that is obviously terrifying. And the reason, obviously, I'm on here today is to talk about, like, people probably don't consider that a risk when they're looking at creating some merchandise that is supposed to be this fun, engaging part of their marketing. They're probably not thinking about, oh God, is this safe? And maybe that's because they're not even intending that this is for children. They're using toys in situations like expos to get more engagement from people. It's to adults, it's to IT managers selling software, for example.
And ideally, these products will be sitting on their desks and it will be taking up the real estate there.
Yeah.
So obviously, a lot of our products will have things like the NFC chips where they can kind of take them over to a landing page. But over time, it doesn't mean that they won't be going into the hands of their children.
Well,
So
that's exactly it. So it's the fact that they are technically appealing to children, which means that all this regulations, the toy safety regulations, are all 100% valid and applicable. So just because you say, oh, this isn't for kids, because it could be a gambling company. The fact that the characters are appealing to children means that they have to be 100% safe for children.
Yeah.
And you can't get out of it by like labeling something as 18 plus or 14 plus or 6 plus. You can't say, oh, it doesn't matter. If it looks like it's for a child and a child would find it appealing, then it needs to be safe for a child. So you can't get out of it by labeling it a clever way.
Yeah, which we found in the article that people have tried to do. So
Yeah, mad. So even Amazon listings, there's one product that has been recalled 3 times. It has failed 6 choking tests. It's failed 1 flammability test, and it keeps getting uploaded by other third-party resellers. But yeah, it just goes to show that, well, sorry, where you were going with that was they tried to get around it by labeling it as 6 plus. So therefore, the fact that the stuffing was accessible in a choking hazard isn't relevant because it's 6 plus. Well, that doesn't get you out of the legislation.
Yeah.
They tried saying that it wasn't a plush toy, it was a cushion. But if it looks like a plush toy, then it is a plush toy. It doesn't matter if you call it a cushion. So there's no loopholes in this. There's no way you can be like, oh, we'll get away with it. We haven't got to worry about this because this isn't for kids or this isn't technically a toy. If it looks like it could be a toy, you've got to treat it like a toy. And that's why we put so much work into every project that we work on, into making sure that everything we do is 100% compliant and safe.
Yeah. I think as well it's things that a lot of brands won't consider because it's kind of like, okay, we'll do the cheaper option. We'll go to, we'll kind of try and do everything ourselves, like cut out almost the middleman. But from our point of view, we're not trying to be the middleman. We're trying to become a part of the team and help with all that stuff. I mean, that is a job in itself, having to take on that responsibility. And I think, especially when it comes to the legal aspects of things, you've just got to be on it with all of the liability insurance and having all of that paperwork there ready. So if there, God forbid, something does go wrong, you know, you're covered and everything has been followed through. The labelling is correct.
Yeah. Well, maybe if I'll take it back a minute just to explain where the liability stuff comes from. Because people may think, well, if I'm creating something for my brand, I'll find a factory overseas and they'll know what they're doing and everything will be fine. And I don't want to like fearmonger. I'm sure most toy factories that you deal with do know what they're doing. They are creating perfectly safe toys. The things you've got to consider, though, is that they will be hot on the regulations in their markets. They will not know about the specific legal ramifications for dealing with the UK, for example, or the EU. But even if you found the best factory in the world, you are now 100% taking... If you are dealing directly with an overseas supplier and bringing the toys in, the toy safety regulations mean that the company that imports the toys, so the brand in this situation, are 100% liable for the safety of the toys. Yeah. So you can't outsource that liability. You can't be like, oh, well, don't worry, I use this factory, they work with Disney, for example, they claim to work with Disney. That doesn't get you out of it because they're not based in the UK. As part of the traceability rules, you have to have a UK registered address. For the CE rules for Europe, you have to have a European registered address. There needs to be a way of contacting the manufacturer should anyone want to report an issue. And that's all for arranging if something like a recall was to happen. So if you don't know what you're doing with that, and if you're, for example, a software or techie company, you obviously know the rules of the game that you're playing. You're in the software world. I don't want to make this feel like it's not something that's achievable, but you're unlikely to have product compliance people at your organisation. People that are able to take on that responsibility, people that are clued up on what they need to include in the technical files.
Have the time. I mean,
but also have the time, yeah.
So if someone has obviously the experience and previously worked in something similar, for something that starts off for a lot of companies as like a little, we'll trial it out, see how it goes. It's a lot of time, manpower that has to go into that to make it happen. And I think that will be taken away from their day to day, which is something, again, that they're not going to particularly be wanting to do when they've got their actual job that they've got to be getting on with on top of things.
For sure. And I just don't think any brand that are ordering some toys would even consider this.
No.
That they are legally, as far as the government is concerned, you are the manufacturer. You are a toy manufacturer now. If you are a software company that's going to do a little expo and they go, we need 1,000 teddy bears to give away at this expo because it'll be nice and it'll get some engagement. If you work directly with an overseas manufacturer, you are, as far as the law is concerned, a toy manufacturer, and you are expected to understand the legal responsibilities, the regulations, the record keeping, the traceability, all of it.
Yeah.
And you can't be like, we're a software company, it doesn't matter. No, it does, because you are, by accepting that delivery, you are a toy manufacturer.
Yeah.
And then the data goes and tells you that 88% of these manufacturers don't get it right. So that's terrifying. Like that, and I don't want to make this, obviously goes completely against what we do as an organisation. Plush toys are an amazing tool to use in marketing. They are so powerful in turning customers into fans, into turning heads at shows, into making you memorable. Like 36% of people will remember a character over a logo, for example, things like that. So I don't want people to listen to this and go, oh my God, we can't do toys. You absolutely can. You just, unless you are prepared to go to China, do the audits, do the testings, like do all that yourself, then just don't have to work with us, but please work with a expert in toy safety that will take the liability and is confident to take the liability of producing toys and releasing them to the UK market, the US market, the European market, whatever. You need to be confident that they know what they're doing. And then if you work with a UK company like us, for example, so if you worked with Custom Toys, we are the importers, we are the manufacturers. We have a long-standing relationship with our manufacturing partners. We have a team in China to work with that we've had that relationship from back in my father's business before I even started this 10 years ago. That relationship has been going 15 years, probably longer. That's not something that you can be expected to sort of, although you would be expected to, that's not the kind of thing you can achieve overnight. Yeah. So I don't want marketing execs to listen to this and be like, oh my God, okay, forget it, we won't do toys. You just got to work with the right people and then it's fine. And then and you're covered. You are not liable. You
can just
take all that
focus on the fun stuff then. I
Exactly.
feel like the whole point in bringing in a character and bringing that kind of to life in either a plush form or a vinyl figurine form, it means that, you get to work on some really exciting campaigns. You can put together some cool social posts, animations, things like that. There's so much else can go into it, but having to then deal with all of the safety side on top of that will kind of take away from all of the things that should be exciting for brands. And I mean, the companies we've worked with, we've been able to jump on design calls, marketing calls, and really flesh out kind of the content plan around incorporating that into their whole marketing strategy for the next 6 to 12 months and how that looks. And I think if you're then having to deal with, on top of that, all of the legal side of things, it does almost put a bit of a downer.
Well, exactly.
Onto that.
That's what we've got a whole team to do.
Yeah.
So let us do that.
Yeah.
You worry about the fun marketing side of things and the strategy and stuff, and let my team deal with all the regulatory stuff.
Talk to me about that, because that's what I want to deal with. I don't want to talk about all of the legal stuff because I don't really know. But one thing actually you did mention, which I'm unsure of, because obviously I don't know how many of the listeners know, but I've not been in this industry long, and even though I am in the industry now, I am just marketing, so I try not to learn all the legal stuff. But you're talking about an EN71 number, and Do you want to explain what that is?
Sure.
Do you know?
Sure. So for like plush toys, if we look at plush toys as a product specifically, there's actually lots of parts to EN71, but the 3 parts we're looking at for plush is parts 1, 2, and 3, which is nice and easy to remember.
Yeah.
So part 1 is looking at the mechanical testing of the toy, and what that means is essentially checking for choking hazards and potential choking hazards and strangulation risks, and essentially establishing the age rating of the toy. So all plush toys need to be suitable for all ages because they are appealing to all ages. You can give a recommended age of 3+, 6+, whatever, but that doesn't, like, labeling something as 3+ doesn't mean that it isn't safe for younger ages. So with all of our products, everything is ensured to be safe for all ages for plush toys. And you're also looking at parts that could come off and become a choking hazard. So you've got a tool that is about this big, and it is a little cylinder, and it represents a child's airway, and you've got to make sure that no part of the toy can come off and be in that.
Yeah.
And that would therefore be a choking hazard. You can also look at like ribbons and things like that. They have to be a certain length so that they are not considered, they can't go over a small child's head and cause a strangulation issue. And there's other more specific parts to it if you're looking at things like teethers and all different specific products. But if we focus on the plush toys, so that's EN71 part 1. So that will establish what your age rating is. But like I said, for plush toys, should be for all ages.
Yeah.
Then we're looking at part 2. That's flammability. So we're making sure that, like, and actually this is something that's worth mentioning as well. Every material that enters our factory is tested for parts 2, and I'll go on to part 3. So we don't use any materials that could ever fail a part 2 or part 3 test, just to be clear on that. But part 2 is flammability. Part 3 is toxicity, which is what I spoke about before. So toxicity is looking at the potential for harmful substances to leach from the materials. So we know that toys often end up in kids' mouths. It's got to make sure that nothing is going to be dangerous from any of the products that we supply. So they're the 3 parts that are the first things to consider with EN71 with plush toys. So yeah, something that I wanted to, I did touch on this earlier, but something that I wanted to make clear is that I'm in no way saying that you shouldn't, like, toys are dangerous and you shouldn't be using them. Most toys, although it's only 52%, most toys are technically safe. But what was quite worrying is that 63% failed because of labelling. There may have been other issues as well, but I think it was only 9% that failed just because of labelling. But 63% in total did have incorrect labelling and traceability. And that's just that's the schoolboy error that a brand is likely to make if they try and do this themselves.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get one little bit wrong. You could have gone to China, made sure it's an ethical factory. You could have, although you've got to make sure that the factory you visit is the actual factory where they're making your stuff. That's a whole other thing. But that's what a company like us does. But yeah, you could do that. You could go out to China. You could see your stuff being made. You could test it all yourself. You could pay for third-party certification, have all the testing certificates done. You could feel like you've covered every possible aspect, and your toy is technically safe. But if there's something wrong on the label, because you don't know, you're not a toy manufacturer. Like, you could get a logo wrong. You could miss off an address. You could get the washing instructions wrong. It's something simple like that, and then suddenly you could be looking at fine. But when we looked at them on the drive up to the studio this morning, that they are 10,000. They start from £10,000, the fines, up to unlimited fines for breaking these rules. So
What the hell?
Yeah, exactly. This is like, so you might save 200 quid on your batch of toys by going directly to a manufacturer on Alibaba, and then cost yourself 10 grand in fines because you've got the label wrong, which, like, is, yeah.
It's catastrophic especially for a small business as well that are trying to kind of do something a little bit fun, but trying to cut costs. I think when it comes to safety and all the ethics and stuff, it's just easier to go through someone similar to us that can kind of help you and talk you through the process. But not only that, we can then obviously support with the things such as, we can support with your marketing, we can support with the design aspects of things. It's not just all, okay, well, we're going to deal with that and we're going to now, like, run you through and micromanage you through the legal side. That's not what we're kind of doing.
Mm-hmm.
We've just taken that off, and we deal with it. You won't even have to hear about it. You just know that it's being dealt with. And I think as well that is a reason why so many of our customers return and trust us and really do look at us as an extension to their team, is because we've done it. Been working with them for 5+ years. Some of them ever since we started, have keep returning because it's just a lot of easier of a process, and we have a great relationship with them.
Like, obviously the figures from the British Toy and Hobby Association investigation are crazy. Like, they're really high.
Yeah.
And these third-party resellers are shipping products that come from the same kind of manufacturers that you'll find if you try and look for a toy factory on Alibaba.
Yeah.
It will be because the reputable factories that work with us, that work with Disney, that work with Walmart, these guys aren't advertising on Alibaba to find new customers. These have got huge multi-million-pound contracts with massive reputable brands. So it will be the ones that prepare to kind of cut some corners, provide exactly what you've asked for. It's not their problem. If a Chinese factory supply, or it doesn't have to be Chinese, if a overseas supplier supplies toys that don't meet UK requirements, that's not their problem. That's your problem. Like, if you're importing them, you are legally responsible. And I think something that really opened my eyes when I was reading through this is you've got huge brands in there like Amazon. And I think some people at home that are thinking about creating toys for their brand might be thinking, well, if Amazon can get away with it, it's obviously not that serious. Like, it's not, they wouldn't do it. And there's this weird loophole that Amazon and...
Always a loophole.
Yeah. I'm not gunning for Amazon. But there is a weird little loophole that this is what the British Toy and Hobby Association has found, that they're advocating to close up. But everything I've been saying about if you import toys directly from overseas, you are legally responsible. You are the legal importer. Technically, you're the manufacturer. These third-party resale sites like Amazon, so you've got resellers that are based overseas that are listing their products on Amazon that then consumers in the UK are buying. Well, technically, Amazon somehow isn't classed as a distributor and therefore has no legal responsibility for the toys that are on there. So that's how they're getting away with it. That's how eBay, that's how Wish, AliExpress, all these sites are getting away with it because it's a third party. So if you're going to do this for your own brand, if you run a cybersecurity business or you run a care, it doesn't matter. It could be any industry. If you run a business from any industry, you're thinking about using toys in your marketing. If you then go to one of these manufacturers that are based overseas, you can't get away with it the same way that Amazon can because you are legally the importer. And when the government does their investigations, they will find your details, hopefully if you've done your labelling right, on the label, so therefore you are responsible.
Yeah.
It'll be your brand, even if you haven't done the labelling right. It'll be your brand on the label, your logo on there, it'll be you that are getting in trouble because you've been let down by someone else in the process. And being ignorant of it or saying, oh, I wasn't aware of it, if you're releasing toys onto the UK market or things that even look like toys onto the UK market, unfortunately, you are responsible for ensuring that they are safe. So that is why if you are to do something like this, it's so important that you work with an expert that understands the risks, has done their risk assessments, knows the standards that you need to be working to, knows the labelling, knows the requirements, all of that stuff. It's so important that you work with someone who knows what they're doing.
And it's a small additional fee as well to kind of work with a third party, such as ourselves.
Well, you say that. Sometimes no. So we get price checked all the time. Obviously, when people buy from us, they want to make sure they're getting a good deal. And I'm sure my sales team will back me up on this. When we get sent comparative quotes, I found this cheap. I can get this done cheaper by working with this factory I found on AliExpress. Fine, whatever, or Alibaba. When you actually look at the pricing and you consider the test costs, the import costs, the import duty, like all that stuff is covered with us. Not to even start considering what the liability of the toys is worth, because I would consider that to be very valuable to a brand. The fact that another company is completely responsible if something was to be found untoward, and we've got people on the ground in the factories to make sure that could never happen anyway. So anyway, I think there's some value in paying a little bit more for toys, if I'm being honest. But we've actually found that quite often when customers do their sums, brands do their sums, there really isn't much in it. So yeah, but I get your point. If you're saving 10% or something, okay, great, I've saved a couple £100.
But you've managed to have a whole team that are working behind the scenes. On top of that, you've got someone managing your project for you, making sure that delivery is going to be on time, and if not, chasing it to make sure it happens. It's in time for your event. I mean, especially when it is overseas, it's so easy for things to get stuck, or sometimes like an overseas shipping might not be good enough, so we'll need to look at air freight, train, things to get it moving a little bit quicker. So I think sometimes there is a little bit of beauty in paying that little bit extra. On top of that, obviously working with you to make sure you're getting the most out of your products. I mean, we're obviously trying our hardest as well to work with as many of our clients as we can to make sure that they're having like a good marketing strategy. A lot of these people might receive their toys and think, oh my gosh, like what do we do with them now? It can feel a little bit overwhelming, especially if you're doing it, in large quantities. And then that way you can lean on us. We've got testimonials from clients that have worked with us and that are in similar industries that we can kind of steer in the right direction. So I think on top of that, our design team helping come up with making the toy the best. I mean, you might whip up a kind of design on ChatGPT or Nano Banana, and it actually not be plausible making that into a plush. You only have the front. You need to look at the side, the back. You can't always do that successfully on those things. We have a design team that can bring that to life, bring your design manuals to life. And I think having all of that on top for just like 10-20% extra, I mean, it's a no-brainer really when you're adding all these additional people in to help bring that kind of vision or idea to life. I think that is the kind of magic in what it is we do.
For sure. Like these, so you made me smile with the whipping something up on ChatGPT, because we're seeing it more and more and more. But I actually love it because I think what AI has done is enabled non-design marketing heads, people that are strategic and have got these amazing ideas, now start to be able to more easily visualize something. And it's really magical the effect it can have on the actual person in the brand. I love all that anyway. But what we don't want to do is turn that dream of a toy that's going to represent the brand and all the benefits that can do into some sort of nightmare when you inherit all these risks of trying to do it on the cheap.
Yeah.
And I think that's the main thing I want people to take away from this today, is that like, just be careful if you're trying to do this on the cheap. It could end up costing you your whole business. Like, it could cost you your whole brand, your whole reputation. I don't want to keep being so negative. But the benefit is, when you're obviously working with a company like us, then we take all those, we handle all those importer obligations. So you don't end up with a liability surprise.
And I think as well, it speaks volumes that like we have, some of our customers like AO, for example, we work with some really big brands. They have huge teams that are working behind the scene, yet they still come back to us. They want to work with us because like we are very trusted, and we work so closely with these with our customers that it doesn't feel like it's kind of a them and us. It really is a partnership that we have with our customers. And I think in that respect, it is just our team dealing with all of the nitty gritty stuff that is a little bit of a pain, so they can focus on getting their campaigns together and kind of working on incorporating that character into their overall messaging, which is the reason why they've introduced a character, right? It's not to add a load of additional workload onto them. So I think it is kind of, people are just blissfully unaware until they're in the industry. And I think I can speak for myself. I didn't realise the amount that goes in behind the scenes, which is pretty much exactly what other marketing people will be feeling, I'm sure.
Well, you're not alone in not realising it. Like, okay, I'm not going to name any names. I don't want to get anyone in trouble. But we were at a expo at the Excel a couple of weeks ago, and one of my colleagues spotted a company doing toys, which I love to see. Obviously, I prefer it if the toys were made by us, but I love to see people using toys in their marketing. I always want to go over and have a chat. What was very immediately apparent, they had no labels on the toys, which immediately is a red flag, because I know best case they just haven't done the labelling right and they can get themselves a fine. Worst case, if they haven't done the labelling right, what else might be wrong? Is this material right? If they cut corners on the labels, which is the easy bit, like have they also cut like corners on the build quality, the materials? It had beaded eyes. Are they anchored in properly? Have we got a choking hazard? There's no age rating, so my colleague tried to make them aware of it in the nicest possible way. And then we've seen recently on their socials, they've had to recall all of their toys, and like they've like the branding way, the marketing way they've done it is quite clever, and that's good. But the damage that may have been caused had we not informed them, and I don't think we'll ever win their business because no one likes to be told they're wrong, and that's not really but we might have saved them a huge financial issue there, well, and moral, ethical issue if anything is actually technically not safe with them.
Yeah.
Hopefully we've just saved them from a fine. But like, where have those toys gone? Because yes, they were given out to professionals in a professional setting, but we hear it time and time again, oh, I'll take one home for my daughter, and then do they go to their daughters, or do they? But even if they do, they stick it in their home, and that's really powerful. But I do worry how many of those toys from a well-known brand have gone into people's homes, and I'm just praying that they actually are safe.
Yeah.
Hopefully they are.
So one thing then that I have a question for you about is, say for example, it's a company that, or a brand that are coming to you, and they'd much rather just go directly to the supplier because they don't want us as a company to take over their design and, you know, start selling that on to other people, because that might be quite personal to them.
Yeah, we've heard that before. So it is obviously a big concern if you're a content creator, or you're for example, like a children's TV program. Your character IP is obviously extremely important. So that's another thing you've got to watch out for. If you're outsourcing the manufacturing to another company, whether that's based in the UK or not, you obviously need to be sure that you still own the IP to your character. You're not also giving them the rights to do anything like that. Yeah. So that is something that we've heard is, oh, I want to go directly to a factory and do this myself because I want to own the character IP. We don't touch any of that. So anything we create for you while working together is retained just solely for your exclusive use. So we couldn't ever make that for ourselves or any other brand. We can't copy designs. We can't use the same techniques. Like, nothing that we produce specifically for a client is ever reused on any other client. And we own that and we protect that. We do not own your character. I don't mean your character by any stretch of the imagination. If you are trying to handle that yourself by going direct to a factory, first off, if as we know that 90% of these factories are creating dangerous toys, are the same 90% of factories going to look after your IP well? I don't know. We've got very long-standing relationships with our factories that we work with the factories that we work with. That risk is eliminated by working with a company like us. That would otherwise be, I know. So to answer your question, a company that's trying to go direct to a factory to protect their IP might actually cause themselves issues with factory stealing IP, while also giving themselves a regulatory headache.
That makes sense. I think as well, it's really important that like people that are kind of on the fence about kind of bringing in a character and kind of bringing that to life is, if they were to kind of work with a company like us, they're still going to be able to be involved with all of the designs. Like, it's completely bespoke. We're not kind of like, okay, this is a catalogue of things you can choose from. Come to us with your ChatGPT designs if that's what you've got, or if you have a design team that have kind of, or a character that's been long standing, we want to see that, because that's kind of what we'll work with. And if not, we can help you and talk to you and brainstorm about creating a character that you like. I mean, that's kind of what happens on those discovery calls with our team. I think the main thing to know is that we want to kind of help you become as creative or if you don't want too much creative control, like we'll help you as much as we can. A lot of our customers, they might decide, what, we've worked with Pennybridge alpacas, for example, all of their stuffing for their alpaca, they've got little alpaca plushes with their own alpacas. So it's the alpaca wool that is the stuffing, which is obviously lovely.
And there's safety standards we need to hit for that wool as well. So that's what we mean. Like every part of what we do, even the fun things, the things that push the boundaries, like you're talking about with that one, we know what we're doing, so you're not going to make an easy mistake. It's very easy to provide stuffing that wouldn't pass an EN71 test, that if they were trying to do this themselves, for example, could get themselves in a bit of trouble.
Exactly, and instead they've just come out with the cutest alpacas that are like from the alpacas that you get to walk. So that's kind of...
I know, kids get to take a bit of the farm home with them, which is lovely.
And they've even said as well that they're their best-selling product as well. So it is so lovely that they're obviously able to go there, experience it, and then obviously take a plush home. But it's little things like that. So we've been able to work with them and personalise it, even though they're kind of going through us, they're still able to add their own little touch to it. And I think it's the same with all of our customers that work with us. If they want it to be 100% recyclable, or they want us to plant so many plastic bottles, or they want it to be so many...
Plant bottles. We don't plant bottles. Before that gets out, we don't plant bottles. We might plant some trees.
We plant them in the right bins.
That's got to make the pod.
That's got to make it.
But yeah, no, we do plant trees though.
Yeah. How many have we planted?
I believe the number is around 10,000.
Really?
Depends when this goes out. Who knows?
It's going to be waiting a bloody long time.
We can fact check it on the screen. On the screen, right?
On the edit.
Here, it will say how many numbers. How many numbers? It will say how many trees we've planted as of today. Charles, you can do this.
Yeah, we need Charles to do that. Love that. So yeah, basically what we're trying to say is you're still going to have as much say, as much creative power as you like. We just deal with all the stuff that you wouldn't even know about if you spoke to us first, and it wasn't even a question for you to...
Well, this is it. So this is the first time, really, I think I'm actually openly talking about all the regulatory stuff. So I don't want people to... Like, this is what we save you from.
Yeah, so you're welcome.
Yeah, quite frankly, you're welcome. No, but really, like, this is not really part of the conversation that we have with our clients, because it's all covered. We have our team that sorts all of this for you, and we, Custom Toys, takes on the responsibility to ensure that your toys are safe. This isn't something that we burden you with. This isn't something we're coming to you with a label and be like, oh, are you sure you're happy with how we've done the logos on there? Obviously, you get approval. We get all the labels approved by you, but it's our responsibility to make sure it's all right. We're not checking any of this information with you. We cover it. If you want to get involved and you've got questions, we're very knowledgeable and we can help you. To be fair, even if you're looking at doing this yourself, and I might regret saying this, but even if you are looking at doing this yourself and you just want a bit of help and guidance, reach out to me. I'd rather help someone do this themselves and, well, I'd rather you work with me, but I'm not going to gatekeep information, because it's more important that the toys that are out there are actually safe, and I don't want people to get fined. I don't want to win a customer because they got fined in the past. Like that's just budget they could be spending with us. But so yeah, genuinely, if anyone's got...
It's giving girls go.
Thank you. And if anyone, to be fair, first off, if anyone's actually listened to this, thank you for listening, because I don't think anyone is. But if anyone does listen to this and they want to do it themselves and they think that they can, just feel free to reach out and ask me any questions. I'll definitely help you. Oh, something I've not spoken about is safety testing. Obviously, we're based in the UK, so we're super, super hot on we're super, super hot on legislation worldwide anyway. The EU and the UK have the most stringent standards worldwide.
Right.
Why'd you make a face?
I've never heard you say that word before.
Stringent. Yeah. Yes, we do. So we're building toys that are totally safe for worldwide markets. And as standard, we're labelling our toys for worldwide markets. Well, as much as is reasonable. So we label as standard for the UK with a UKCA mark. We label for the EU with a CE mark. We label for the US market, which is ASTM F963. And you'll notice I didn't read that because I know it. We label for New Zealand and Australia with ISO 8124. And that's what we label for as standard. But if you have other markets that you want the toys to be accessible to, so not as standard, but we can also cover G mark testing for Gulf region countries. So that'll be your UAE, Saudi, Qatar, that area.
Nice.
We've labelled, we did a project, I'm not sure if I can even say who it is, so if it's under NDA, bleep it out now. But when we worked with NDA Police, they wanted to distribute the toys globally. So that is the most sets of individual test certificates we've ever done, and probably the biggest label or amount of labels that we've ever had to put in a toy before. But just to prove that we can do global reach, you don't have to find a partner in each different territory. If you're working with the right one, they should know what they're doing.
Nice.
And obviously all the traceability comes back to us. So we can distribute these toys globally to all of their customers to say thank you without having to worry about the regulatory mistakes pit that they might have fallen into.